everybody. We are officially live on Access Humboldt now.
Oh, okay. Well, should we give Leslie a little bit more time, or do you want to get started?
I think we can give her a minute or two.
Okay.
Yeah, she's usually pretty prompt.
Uh-huh.
Your schedule for tomorrow. This is all I got me so far.
Yeah. Perfect.
Pretty much all there is to it.
All right. Thanks, honey.
Hey.
And Tony's here. Is Eric here? We don't have Eric yet. And Leslie is connecting now.
Okay, good. See her yet? There she is. Okay.
Hey.
So we have our board. So I will call the November 12th, 2020 meeting of Humboldt Waste Management Board of Directors to order and ask for roll call, please.
Bone?
Yep.
Castellano?
Here.
Hogan?
Yeah, here.
Herrera?
Here.
Wilson?
Here.
Sweeney?
Present. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the HWMA board. Will be acted upon by one motion unless a specific request for review is made by a board member or a member of the public. Consent calendar will not be read. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless polled for discussion. Is there any member of the board that would like to pull an item from the consent calendar?
I just have a question about the green waste, about item C. If we could
Would
pull
you
it
just
up.
like to ask a quick question, or is it more of an involved
Yeah,
discussion?
I just no, I just was curious. It's a pretty unique agreement, and Arcata's the only member of the JPA that has this type of agreement. So I was just curious to know a little bit more about that, and if there are other cities in the JPA that have attempted to do something similar, or kind of how it came about, and why just Arcata?
Sure. If it's okay with the chair, I can go ahead and answer the question from a big picture perspective.
Sure, go ahead.
So the short story is that we have an agreement with Mad River Hardwoods for the processing of HWMA's green waste material, and that includes all of our member agencies. We also had a direct agreement with the city of Arcata because the city of Arcata had established a no-fee drop-off for Arcata residents. And so what happens is Arcata residents drop off the material is logged in, Mad River Hardwoods then bills us because it's member agency material. We then turn around and bill the city of Arcata for that material, and that's what that relationship is. Underneath the master agreement, if you will, that we have with Mad River Hardwoods, any city can go ahead and avail to this. It was one of the provisions that we made. City of Eureka simply has a franchise agreement where green waste is picked up at the curb and brought to HWMA's facility, as well as self-hauling, and residents pay for the material that's coming across the scale. So Eureka residents are taken care of. The city of Blue Lake has been a little bit different in the sense that you guys have opted to have a more direct relationship with your hauler, where you've had the 2 free green waste drop-offs per year. And I don't honestly understand how the financing of that particular agreement is handled, other than that is between the city and the hauler. But the city of Blue Lake is receiving HWMA's member agency rates for the processing of green waste materials.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Does any member of the public wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Hearing none, seeing none, let's move on to approve the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve?
I will make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Yeah,
And
I'll
we have a
second.
second. Okay. Elaine seconded that. So using the roll call order, Tyler, can we vote on the consent calendar, please?
Bone?
Yep. Good.
Castellano?
Aye.
Hogan? Herrera?
Aye.
Wilson?
Yes.
Sweeney?
Aye. Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is oral and written communications. This is the time to provide for people who address the board or to submit written communications concerning matters not on this agenda. Are there any, does anyone from the public wish to speak to an issue not on this evening's agenda? Or I'll ask staff if they've received any written communications.
Yeah, I'll just note that in your board packet, there is an announcement under agenda item 3 from Zero Waste Humboldt. They were announcing that Sunday, November 15th, they're going to have the Zero Heroes Night. I don't have a lot of information about it other than what is in your packet itself. So I would encourage folks to contact Zero Waste Humboldt at gmail.com. We were originally going to have a presentation from Zero Waste Humboldt this evening. It needed to be continued due to a personal reason. So we'll have the board hear that in January, but they were able to provide me this information to make sure that board members and interested members of the public could participate in their evening on the 15th at 7 p.m.
Great. Okay, thank you, Jill. Next item on our agenda is to receive and approve the 2021-2025 Capital Improvement Plan. Back to Jill.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be introducing Tyler and have him present this information. As board members know, we have the first capital improvement plan was presented to you all in late 2016. And so Tyler and our other directors have been working hard at revising and making it a little bit more modern. So I'm going to turn it over to Tyler.
Thank you.
Tyler.
Thank you, members of the board. Just going to hit some greatest hits here, and then I'll turn it over for questions if you have any. The enclosed CIP is a 5-year window now instead of a 7-year window. 5 years is a little more standard. And the anticipated plan is to bring the plan before the board at each annual budget. We'll bring it in at the draft meeting to discuss upcoming projects and any adjustments that the board may want to see or that staff is recommending. And a lot of this is all based, of course, on available funding, other projects going on, and what might lead to having to delay or move projects around. In the past, the CIP, as Jill mentioned, was presented in 2016 and has gone fairly untouched since then. We have made minor adjustments to the projects as presented, but in general, all the projects have been completed in one way or another. And so what you're seeing here is the start of a new CIP for a new 5-year window. you'll notice that there are 14 projects total, and almost half of them are dated for fiscal year 2021, which is the year, of course, we are currently in. That is the tail end of the old CIP, which has now basically reached the end of its life with the exception of one project, which I'll get to in a moment. So a lot of those projects are going to fall off this year, and you'll see a lot of new projects either begin or the planning for them be introduced in fiscal year 2026 to show sort of the growth and continuance of this capital improvement plan. To kind of go over some of the small things about the plan, obviously it is not approval of any of the projects that are listed in it. It is merely a guide that staff will use to implement board direction. And of course, we will bring all of these projects before the board for final approval of the bid documents, the final approval of any other sort of plan that's required before we even start looking for someone to implement these projects. All projects in the CIP are above the threshold for which any director, including the executive director, have spending authority. So only the board can approve the implementation of projects and the final result of those projects. Let's see. Next, finally, honestly, there's only one item on this plan that we're actually recommending the board remove tonight, and that is the materials recovery facility. This is the final project from the 2013 strategic plan, going even further back, that was implemented by the board in that year with the aim at improving diversion and implementing a number of programs and projects in the authority with the intent of reducing total tonnage to landfill and sort of implementing a better vision of the authority's operations over a 10-year period. The materials recovery facility is the last project on that list that has not been addressed by authority staff and the board. And looking at it, it is also the one that was at the highest risk for being adjusted as the authority grew over the last, actually, of course, now 8 years. Things have changed enough that there are reasons why the MRF would not actually be as useful for the authority as it once was imagined in 2013. First off, there are considerations for space and other issues in the facility itself. There's of course cost, although that cost would be borne over a number of years as we have borne other large projects. But more importantly, as things have changed, especially in our partnership with Recology, a materials recovery facility would kind of step on private business activities currently. And that's something that the authority has always sort of shied away from unless absolutely necessary. So when you look at the overall view of the authority currently, adding this anticipated materials recovery facility simply doesn't work with the current view of the authority and its ongoing narrative. So as part of the approval of the draft CIP, which you see before you, we are asking the board to approve removal of the materials recovery facility, and that final copy will actually have that component removed. That takes the total amount of projects from approximately 12.5 million to 1.5 million. It's of course a sizable step down, but these projects that will be left are better designed to first address ongoing maintenance and upgrade issues for authority equipment, and secondly, prepare us for new projects, such as anything that might come up with organics, other recycling items that we may find, and of course, we're still working on our facility master planning, and when we get back to that, we'll be looking at some significant costs there as well. That is this CIP in a nutshell. If you have any questions, I am available.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. Do board members have any questions? Maybe we can go down the roll call vote, Tyler, to give people opportunities to ask questions.
Yes, Bone.
Yeah, I noticed the excavator and the wheel. Didn't we replace a couple of those already?
We have. So there are two different versions of the projects on the CIP. The ones that are most recent are for the landfill. The landfill's equipment hasn't been touched basically since we took over the landfill. So they have a mini excavator and a mini backhoe, which are doing minor repair work around the landfill. And that equipment is just aging. What we're trying to get the directors into is a life cycle of making sure that equipment is at the very least current enough to be easily repaired. At the transfer station, everything that's on there, the most current loader is the last one to be upgraded. We actually haven't touched it again since about 2005, 2006. And anything else you see on there, for instance, the other excavator is actually not even planned to be looked at until 2025. It's on there as an example of what the board will see, for instance, coming up in the next fiscal year budget when we review and move this capital improvement plan forward a year. We won't even be talking about its replacement and purchase for another 4 years.
All right.
Okay.
The only other thing I said, I know we just voted on 2 pickups, and I did want to ask a question. I see one's 50 and one's 30, and I noticed we're asking for heavy duty, and one of them was a pretty old half-ton, that Dodge, and then I noticed we're asking now for diesels. And how many miles are those driven annually for that kind of an upgrade for what we're talking about? And how often do they haul a 12,000-pound trailer?
So they don't often haul that much material, but they are used regularly for the hauling of material, is I guess the best way to put it. They won't be, the one at the transfer station will actually be replacing 2 vehicles. We have an F550 flatbed down there, and we will actually be replacing it as well to do the heavy duty lifting of both vehicles. At the landfill, it is the only piece of equipment available for staff. So it will be moving most likely a water buffalo for regular watering throughout the facility, as well as any material hauling for staff back to the landfill themselves.
Just seems like a lot of pickup, but okay.
Rex, to dovetail on what Tyler said, one of the biggest issues we've had in the past with replacing equipment is that we pigeonhole ourselves into the current operations that we're currently doing. And a lot of times that requires us to replace equipment that maybe doesn't need to be too soon. What, at least for the transfer station, what I'm doing is there's no plans to replace the 550 like Tyler mentioned. We already need the 1500 replaced. Instead of getting another 1500, we're going to use the 2500 to replace both these vehicles in hopes that if there are future activities such as tire events, possible hazardous waste events, white good events, that this pickup will be able to do double duty in that capacity. Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric. Any other questions, Rex?
No, the diesel's about an $8,500 add-on. I just didn't know unless it was using an extreme amount of miles and everything else. I didn't know if it was worth the add-on.
Okay.
Castellano.
Just a quick question about the materials recovery facility. It seems like as we continue to do the waste analysis, we may identify, need for other improvements or maybe different types of materials that would need to be recovered. And then I'm assuming that we could address that in future plans in terms of perhaps we don't need, a CRV materials recovery facility, but we need something else, and we could then make plans at that point. Is that the idea that we're looking at here?
Yeah. In part, when Tyler was referring to the material recovery facility that is being operated by Recology, that is a recycling, facility. What we would be looking at is what they refer to as a dirty MRF. So basically the garbage coming in would then be sorted and then identify if there's any materials that is in there that could be recovered, whether it's wood or it's paper, or, of course, it's already been intermixed with garbage. So it makes it a little bit harder. At the time that this was undertaken, in 2011, when the strategic plan initially kicked off, the recycling market was still pretty strong. And of course, today we're having more and more difficulty even finding markets for materials that are coming off that back end in that manner. We'd probably be better served to figure out how to establish diversion programs that sort of retain the integrity of that material so that it's not being intermixed with garbage and then separated out, but trying to find ways that we're keeping it intact so we can actually get it into some sort of recycling or other processing type. There's a word I'm looking for, and it's just kind of missing. But that's kind of, I think the dirty MRFs were all right, but I think the world is changing quickly enough that we recognize that we need to have a higher quality material if we're going to get it back into a market for recycling or reuse.
Yeah.
There are also just other materials which our focus may be better utilized for. And I think that'll take, again, the end of that characterization study to fully understand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Next.
Sorry, Toby.
Yeah, next person, Tyler.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Yeah, to Leslie's point, I think, I can understand, pulling the MRF. I think that makes a lot of sense, kind of given where we are versus, several years ago, but recognizing that, yeah, as we get more information, we may need to amend the CIP and add something else into it. So I think it's good that we're doing a 5-year CIP, shortening it and recognizing, right, that if we need to revise it, we can. So yeah, thank you. And by the way, just really appreciate the formatting of this, really easy to read through. So,
Yeah, definitely.
That's the hope. That's the hope. As a guide document, it's not meant to be terribly technical. And I think, again, to drive this point home, rather than kind of letting it live on its own for a while, we'll bring it back as a primary component of the budget so that it's being looked at every year. Even if we don't add anything in a year, it's something that the board is considering. And of course, as we get more information and have better uses for bigger projects, they will absolutely enter into the CIP.
Okay, thank you, Sophia.
Wilson.
Well, just the only thing I have is on the little project office out at the landfill. Is that another? I haven't been out there, but is that you have like some kind of a trailer house or portable modular building there now?
Yeah, we do. It's a very old trailer. It's been out there for quite some time, and it has weathered not only weather but just a variety of uses throughout the life of the landfill. We are looking at a couple of different ways to implement a new office going forward. One of which might be just improvements to our shop area, which allow for staff to have an internal office on the same footprint with less effort than replacing the trailer outside. The shop area is extremely well protected, and improvements to it would simply make more sense. They would take a lot less time and effort as well. So it's just something that's been actually in the process for about 4 years now. We've tried to revisit it over and over again, and we're getting a lot closer now, thank God. It's a good project, and it's just something that our staff has put up with a very outdated and aging break and office area for quite some time. So it's just due for an upgrade.
So I'm going to add that this is actually an item that has been approved a couple of times. We had initially anticipated that the trailer replacement would be about $25,000, $30,000. And at the point that we started looking into replacement of that project, it will have to meet ADA. It has to have seismic fittings and whatnot. And there were a couple of other items that very quickly ramped up the cost. And when we got the most recent set of estimates early last year, it was over $120 some odd thousand. with all the improvements that were going to have to be made to the site and everything else, I said, we ought to be talking about brick and mortar, because a trailer is only going to have a limited time frame. So we started looking at the alternate of maybe getting it moved inside the existing maintenance building, and what would it take to make that happen. So the simple replacement of the trailer turns out that it's the trailer, I think, was probably purchased about 1975. It has, it's got some issues, and so we are looking at bringing it more modern and bringing it into the building itself, so it's a proper office space itself.
So then it really hasn't been determined what you're actually going to do. You're still kind of a work in progress to approve.
Yeah, that's correct. We were making pretty good headway until everything sort of came to a suspension, if you will. I don't think that we're at a halt. We're just sort of in this weird suspension place. So yeah, we've been looking at some preliminary engineering designs and getting some quotes and moving that forward.
Okay, so that's why it didn't really spell it out in the description, is why I was asking. I understand that whatever you had needed to go, but I think that answers my question. And that's the rest of it all looks like it's wear and tear on machinery that you're going to have to replace to keep your place going. So I'm good.
And thank you, Frank.
And Sweeney.
Well, let's see. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that we can revisit this each year doing our budget discussions. That allows for any amendments that are necessary at that time, as well as just kind of a refresher for board members as to what these projects are and what constitutes our CIP program. And I would also like to echo other directors, and I really appreciated that the format that you presented the projects in. It was just kind of boom, 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 and you get the gist and move forward. So good job there. So let's see, are there any comments from the public on this capital improvement plan? I'm not even sure we have any public, do we?
Oh, we got lots of people here today.
Okay, I don't see anybody raising their hands or jumping up and down. So is there a motion? You want to do all four of these in one motion? Yeah.
Yes.
So we're looking at a motion that directs staff to remove materials recovery facility from the list of planned projects, except the 2021-2025 CIP, and take other directions as appropriate. Is there
I'll
a
make
motion?
a motion to accept the 2021-2025 capital improvement plan with the amendment of removing the materials recovery facility project from the list of planned projects.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second? And we have a second. Okay, Tyler, can we go down the roll call, please?
Of course. Bone.
Yep.
Castellano.
Aye.
Hogan.
Yes.
Herrera.
Aye.
Wilson.
Yes.
Sweeney.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, moving along. See, I've lost my agenda. Where did it go? Here it is. No, that's the old one. Okay, well, it got lost in the pile somewhere. What is the next item is the Crv Pilot Study.
It is.
This is going to be made into a movie, just for those of you that are interested in it. It'll be on Netflix by this time next year. So
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to Jill to give you a little preview.
Yeah, I'm going to be sharing my screen with you. So if you'll just bear with me for one moment. Let me just make sure that I got it here. Can you guys all see this thus far? Excellent, excellent. So again, I really appreciate the opportunity for us all to be discussing the CRV and our conceptual CRV pilot project that had been developed over the last month and a half, 2 months for the public as well as the board, and to provide you the most recent update of our project. I am trying to find a way to get, there you guys, now you're up at the top of the screen and that helps. So as board members will recall, the original intent of the state CRV Container and Litter Act of 1986, oftentimes referred to as the bottle bill, was to incentivize recycling by establishing a fee for beverage containers, and beverage manufacturers pay this fee to CalRecycle, whether it's 5 cents or 10 cents a unit, and they pass that fee on to consumers at the point of sale. And these collected CRV payments that are paid in the stores do not go to our local recycling centers. The collected monies are all being used to support the state CalRecycle programs. Now, initially, consumers purchasing a beverage would then conveniently redeem the empty container at a store when they next visited. And this is how the program functioned for a lot of years. But as the commodities market values increased, there was also a corresponding increase of independent recycling redemption centers. And those obligated retailers welcomed these redemption centers because they relieved the store of the responsibility to redeem, to staff, to handle the materials, bail, and ship the used containers to market, wherever that may be. And that the primary beverage type, the material type in the mid-1980s was, of course, aluminum and glass. And with the exception of Perrier or some other similar glass bottled water, people didn't purchase bottled water off the shelf. And certainly we didn't have water in plastic 16-ounce bottles. And today there's a greater proliferation of an array of beverage types that are now available to consumers. And increasingly those beverages are being sold in plastic containers, which of course are a lower valued commodity. Now, locally, CalRecycle there's 23 convenience zones, and CalRecycle has exempted 78% of those convenience zone obligated retailers from having to provide CRV buyback services or having to pay the $100 a fine for not providing that CRV redemption service. As board members well know, in 2010, there were a little more than 10 CRV redemption facilities in Humboldt County. And by early 2020, that had been reduced to 5 facilities. And of course, 4 of our facilities were decertified in September of 2020. Now, CalRecycle in late October, I believe the letter went out on October 20th, CalRecycle issued letters to the obligated retailers informing them of their now unserved status. They used to be exempt, now they're unserved, and that they must either provide CRV redemption services or pay the $100 a day fine to CalRecycle. So the closure of the CRV redemption services centers, statewide, as we've discussed, are the result of an economic collapse, which has resulted from a continued and steep decline of commodity scrap values over the last 5 years, and even more so following China's national sword policy. There are additional factors, which include reduction in the state processing payments that are received by recyclers, as well as a rise in our operational costs that have resulted from state requirements such as minimum wage increases. And with the closing of over 298 CRV redemption centers in early 2016, that was then followed by a second wave of closures in 2019, 2019 by California's largest chain of almost 300 recycling centers that were owned by Replanet, the state legislature approved 2 related bills that established a CRV pilot project program, which requires that local jurisdictions and recycling center operators work closely together in order to provide more redemption opportunities for consumers. Jurisdictions are required to meet certain eligibility requirements, and then they apply for the pilot project. And each jurisdiction itself must have an approved pilot project recycler. A combination of jurisdictions can complete and attach supporting information into a singular application. As provided for underneath AB 54, eligible projects may receive up to $1 million in funding to offset those eligible costs that were incurred through July of 2022. After the grant timeline terminates, pilot project funding and the allowances such as appointments or modified operating hours, processing and handling fees will revert to regular CalRecycle requirements. In short, this is how the pathway looks like. So you've got your jurisdiction and your recycler, and they begin to sort of bandy about different ideas for how they can improve and expand the opportunity of CRV redemption by the consumer. And the jurisdiction will then put together their application and submit it to CalRecycle. CalRecycle will then evaluate that application, and they will determine whether or not to approve it. At the point that the application is approved, the jurisdiction is then invited to apply for a grant fund. At the same time, they can then work with the recycler to prepare their application. And in this case, the recycler can't submit their application unless and until the jurisdiction has been approved and they have explicit permission by the jurisdiction to apply for this. Now, and I kind of skipped ahead of this. At the October 20th Humboldt County Board of Supervisors meeting, I was able to make a presentation to the board about the state of CRV and the pilot project concept. And the board directed county staff to initiate preparation of the pilot project jurisdiction application. The application is only applicable to the unincorporated areas of the county unless other municipal jurisdictions express an interest in either submitting individual applications or be willing to enter into some form of memorandum of agreement with the county so that they can prepare a joint application. Because HWMA is located within the city of Eureka's jurisdiction, we would be dependent upon the city of Eureka agreeing to be a participating jurisdiction. For purposes of Leslie, I do want to note that I have provided this information to both Robin and Donna last week. In order to assist the county, I did prepare and submitted a draft memorandum of agreement, which was submitted to their staff and legal counsel to initiate their review, and that was completed last week. And then once complete, the agreement would be submitted to interested city jurisdictions. Now, interested recyclers such as HWMA, because that's what we are in this case, cannot submit the application until the jurisdiction itself has been approved and the jurisdiction has authorized the product recyclers to submit an application. As I note in the staff report, we would have to be recertified and complete the certification training in the jurisdictions where there would be a proposed pilot project, and we will need to identify the potential recycling sites prior to submitting the application. And you know, as we've talked about before, the primary incentive is that the participating recyclers would be able to deviate from certain requirements that are statutorily required. Now, HWMA was being encouraged by CalRecycle to submit a pilot project application. This was applicable only to the Eureka Recycling Center site. Now, with the other 3 redemption sites decertified, as we've discussed with the board, as we did with the Board of Supervisors, the Eureka Recycling Center site simply can't operate as the sole CRV redemption center in Humboldt, simply because of our facility size and our staffing constraints. And of course, even if we were to be operating by appointment only, it's critical to understand that in reviewing the grant criterion, proposals are to be designed to improve redemption sites and to create new convenient sites. And an appointment-based application does not meet the basic qualifying criteria. And we've had several conversations with Cal Recycle staff on that matter. As I've previously expressed, for all of the recycling centers for the redemption component, we are required to operate consistent with Cal Recycle regulations or be subject to violations. And we have very, very little operational latitude or flexibility. And as board members are well aware, HWMA did make inquiries last spring with Cal Recycle to discuss whether or not we could do the pop-up or secure another operator to perform offsite CRV services under our certification, or that we could accept customers temporarily on an appointment basis. And the answer, of course, was no. HWMA, Humboldt Sanitation, and Recology had also previously met with Senator McGuire's staff in early June in order to express our concerns and trying to find some form of workaround. Now, to prepare you here, these images were taken early in the morning. So you're going to see a lot of them are closed and there's no people or vehicles that are around. But one of the things that I wanted to share with all of you is that, as I noted, these were taken, first thing in the morning. And I'm hoping that it kind of helps to convey some of the reasons for our concern. This slide in particular is Humboldt Sanitation's Recycling Center and the former CRV Redemption. Their transfer station is the blue and white building, which is located further behind this little carport where they perform their sorting activities for recycling. The overall footprint of their facility is very small and they have very limited parking, as you can see here. The site is adjacent to the queue lane, which will bring you into the transfer station scales. So when recycling customers are backing out of the parking space, they have to navigate the trash customers that are in the queue, or in order so that they can go into the queue to go drop off their garbage, or they have to cross that line in order to exit the facility. This is the transfer station, which is located in Redway, and they have 2 distinct areas in a singular building. This side of the facility accepts trash, and this side of their facility is accepting recycling and the former CRV transactions. This is Eel River Recology's Fortuna transfer station. This building here accepts all of the solid waste. And here we have where the recycling center is accepted. And I believe on the back side, last time I was there was when Harry Harnden still had it under Eel River. There was the mechanics repair shop that was back there. And of course, HWMA's Eureka Recycling Center. This photo was taken earlier this year, and the CRV scales have been moved a little bit. We made some improvements in here, but the scales are adjacent to the gray scale house, and the remainder of the facilities behind those drop-off bins is where we perform the appliance receipt and dismantling, as well as televisions and computer screens and other electronic waste, in addition to storing whatever baled recyclable materials we have. We also have 2 50-yard bin containers, which is where a lot of the plastic and the aluminum was placed into. So, in an effort to address the problem that no singular recycling location is of sufficient size to meet the needs of Humboldt residents, I approached Humboldt Sanitation and Recology in mid-October to have them reassess their interest and potential willingness to reconsider and evaluate participating in a pilot project. And specifically what we talked about is that we would all be able to be recertified. And one of the things that's been really great is, as we've discussed with the board, CalRecycle was requiring that voucher training be performed in Sacramento while the rest of the state is in a shelter in place. CalRecycle's training is going to be finally offered online, and they're going to be able to put that into place in December, I believe. The other thing we're looking at is developing protocols for operation at recycling centers on an appointment-based model in order to manage the customer volumes. I think you have a better sense. We're the biggest one, and we had, people waiting 3-4 hours to get into our facility. Imagine what that would have looked like for Redway and McKinleyville in particular. So if we're going to be looking at reopening, having an appointment-based model or some other way in order to manage inbound customers is going to be critical. We all need to be receiving handling fees. Again, HWMA and Recology have not been receiving handling fees. And one of the things that we all felt would be important is that we would be able to temporarily allow for an increase of the allowable daily load limits of CRV material to pre-2014 limits. What does that mean? If you were to bring in material into HWMA or any CRV site in the state of California, you are only allowed to bring in 100 pounds of aluminum, 100 pounds of plastic, and 1,000 pounds of glass. Now, before 2014, you were allowed to bring 500 pounds, and 2,500 pounds of glass. So what we would like to see is a temporary increase so that we could get rid of that backlog of material that has been accumulating in residents. And then, of course, that we could find a way to be eligible for some form of shore-up provision or adjustment to the recycling, to CalRecycle's processing fees so that we can be reimbursed our unrecovered cost. The second part of the concept has been pretty interesting, examining the potential role that reverse vending machines could have. And what we've been talking about conceptually is that reverse vending machines could be placed either at a willing obligated retailer location or on municipal owned properties such as the library, city hall, or some other sort of public facility. It would be serviced by one or potentially all three recyclers. We're still, all having those conversations. And we had a conversation with the manufacturer around the possibility of HWMA having employees trained so that they could be dispatched and perform any sort of equipment malfunction or maintenance repair of the equipment. Otherwise, the manufacturer has to dispatch somebody from out of state. So we were trying to figure out how we could be resilient within our little community here. And the hope was that we would be able to use grant funds in order to have site development as well as the reverse vending machine purchase. I want to just quickly acknowledge this is not a stock photo. This is a result of our Director of Operations, Eric Keller-Heckman, visiting his family about 2 weeks ago in Portland area, and he was able to go to this facility, and he was able to get some photos and able to have some limited access to see the internal workings of the unit itself and how material comes in and out of the facility. Very clean sort of layout. Obviously, they had to make a building modification in order to accommodate this cargo kind of styled container. So, after the October Board of Supervisors meeting, I requested that CalRecycle send these convenient zone maps for discussion, as well as so that we could forward this to county staff. I want to make sure that we're able to help them in whatever way we can. So this map was provided to us on November 6th. And yes, that is not our typo, being the city of McKinleyville. The city of Myrtletown is a new community, as well as a number of other folks. Let's see here. We've got So some of the considerations that, we wanted to make sure that we had on the board's, radar is, number one, what is the competitiveness of submitting a third application to vie for a single remaining slot? As we talked about in September, we were aware that there were more applications than they had slots. And today there's only one slot. At the time that I wrote this, there's only one slot that's remaining. We also needed to assess the potential inclusion of other jurisdictions, as well as their willingness to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the County of Humboldt. And if a pilot program is approved, convenience zones within the entire program area will be considered served, thereby relieving all obligated CRV retailers of their responsibility to redeem materials or pay the $100 a day fine. There is a legislative end date, which is July 1st of 2022, after which all operators will be required to revert and comply with the regular CalRecycle operational requirements. Now, one of the things that was really troubling, and it was the primary reason that I had a conversation with CalRecycle staff most recently on October 29th, was this provision. When we started diving into some of the details to evaluate developing a project proposal, in the legislation itself, this is where I had to find this, I said, could you please clarify that this is accurate? Or maybe I am simply misinterpreting something, hoping I was. Pilot project recyclers shall pay the refund value of no more than 25 pounds of aluminum or plastic beverage containers or 250 pounds of glass. This is a 75% reduction of what we are currently able to receive at our facilities now. So I shared with CalRecycle staff that this might be reasonable as far as reverse vending machine operators, or even those recycling centers that are in more urban areas where they have more opportunity and people are bringing in smaller volumes of material. It is an unreasonable constraint to the recycling centers who are capable of handling the existing allowable daily load limits of the 100 pounds of aluminum and plastic containers and glass. And additionally, many Humboldt County residents live in outlying areas, and they only come into town every few weeks or month, or sometimes less frequent than that. So that's when they bring their material in. And as part of our conceptual proposal, we were hoping to propose a temporary increase of that allowable daily load limit to the pre-2014 limits in order to address the accumulated materials that many North Coast consumers have stored. CalRecycle's response was that the pilot project legislation restricts allowable loads to the adjusted standard of the 25 pounds, and there is no provision for more material, as that poundage was based on the average consumer load. And alternatively, they did say that non-pilot project recycling centers, so if HWMA was not to be involved, we would be able to continue to be allow that limit of 100 pounds and 1,000 pounds of glass, but we would not be receiving those handling fees, nor would we be able to have the pilot project allowance, such as appointments. Now, as previously noted, the pilot program allows for the approval of no more than 5 projects, each with the potential funding of up to $1 million each. And as described in September, CalRecycle staff had described that 2 jurisdiction projects had been approved earlier in the year, a third was pending, and that there were 4 applications that were under consideration for the 2 remaining slots. Now, Culver City applied for their application in September, and they were announced as an award in February. They then began working with their recycler, and they just began project implementation a little over a week ago on October 30th. The city of San Francisco submitted their application in fall of 2019, and they also were the second one to be announced for February of 2020. I'm not certain that they have a recycler yet, but I know that they have no implementation as of this date. When I had a conversation with their probably a few million dollars more for their project. With respect to the San Mateo, that was approved on October 2nd of just this last month. I don't know for certain what their submittal date is, and I don't know where they are in their implementation. They will obviously be working with a recycler. I'm not certain that they have secured one at this time. The most recent one was City of Irvine, and when I contacted them, they were a little shocked that I had found out. I'm not sure where I found it out from, but they applied a year ago, and they just received their approval to move forward about mid-month, and they are working with a recycler with their application right now. They don't have an anticipated start date. They're thinking it's going to be sometime in the beginning, maybe the beginning part of the year, maybe mid-year before they're there. So that remained one slot, and there were 2 applications that have been under ongoing consideration. Now, this past Tuesday, as in 2 days ago, November 10th, I was informed that the 5th slot had been awarded, and they had awarded, CalRecycle awarded that on November 6th. And this was obviously a surprise and a disappointment because we had received the convenience zones from CalRecycle on November 6th, as well as the release of our board agenda for the meeting, for this meeting this evening. Hambro representatives had contacted me on Tuesday morning, and I thank them very much. We do have them here on the line with us because they were curious whether or not we had received the approval because they had initiated their pilot project process essentially last January. They had the formal submittal to CalRecycle in March, and I explained that we were still in the concept phase and we were bringing this item to the board this evening, so no, we're not the ones that bumped them. So obviously, where this fundamentally changes our board, our recommendation to the board, because everything that we were going to ask for is now moot. There are simply no available slots to apply for. This is pretty frustrating all around. The state of CRV redemption is continuing to adversely affect Humboldt residents and our businesses, and we desperately need to have our legislative representatives make a concerted approach to address and reform the bottle bill. So under the umbrella of other direction as appropriate, I am asking that the board consider making a legislative relief request. It is important that a viable and comprehensive reform be developed and in an expeditious manner. HWMA is aware that CalRecycle has submitted the notices to the retailers of their obligation to redeem CRV containers, and the likelihood is that they are going to resist development of redemption centers on their sites, preferring instead to pay the $100 a day fine. But ultimately, it's not the retailer that's paying that fine. It's the consumer that is going to pay the fine through an increase at the till, whatever that looks like. So we're paying the CRV deposit, and now we're going to have to pay a fine for not being able to get our CRV deposits back. And in light of the fact that the 5th pilot project was awarded, and recognizing that the pilot project program was legislatively created as a result of CRV center closures, staff is asking that the board authorize the chair to submit a letter to our state representatives asking that they sponsor temporarily legislative action and relief until a bottle bill reform is in place that would enable and provide recyclers in rural communities like Humboldt the temporary ability to develop an appointment-based model, to modify our hours of operation as appropriate for our community and not be state mandated, and to increase the allowable daily load limits to pre-2014, and to receive handling fees, and to have a regional adjustment of processing fees. And frankly, just put those into play until the CRV's bottle bill program has been reformed. I would also ask that if the board authorizes the chair to put a letter together to our state representatives, that each member on our board bring and introduce a request for similar action by your agencies themselves. This essentially concludes my presentation. It has been just a whipsaw, obviously not anticipating that they were going to be awarding that 5th slot. Certainly not while we were having ongoing conversations. Little heads up would have been really helpful, because I can't begin to tell you how many hours that we have all put into this particular effort. This does conclude my presentation. I am available for questions, but I do want to note that we have Linda Wise, General Manager of Ecology, with us. We have Tasha Eisner with Humboldt Sanitation. We have Joe Perez. He is the Business Development Manager of Tomra. He's the reverse vending machine. We also have, I want to introduce Jeff Dunlevy. He's the General Manager of Ming's Recycling, and they purchased a lot of the material from Humboldt, from HWMA, HumSan, and Recology. But probably of interest to you all is that Jeff is a member of the statewide commission on recycling markets and curbside recycling. And so he may have some interesting perspectives and input in here. So I would certainly ask if any of them would like to address the board, they'd be given the opportunity. So I'm really sorry. I know this comes as a big surprise. Again, we've all been caught really blindsided by this.
Yes, thank you, Jill. So regarding the upcoming movie, the decision on the genre has not been made. It's either going to be a horror film or a comedy. So that decision will be made relatively soon, I would think. So it seems like maybe some of our guests, have them speak to this issue first and then go to board members. Does that make sense?
Your preference.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't we do that? Should we start with Tony?
Tony,
like to speak to this issue? Have anything to add or say?
John or Linda? Oh, I hear somebody and I can't figure out who it is.
Yeah, I can't hear him. He unmuted. Tony can.
I have nothing to add. No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
And how about Jeff? No, nothing to add.
Yes. No, I do. Thank you. I was getting unmuted.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. I'm based in Sacramento, and I do work for Ming's Resources. We have facilities in Sacramento and Hayward. We're one of the largest state certified processors in the state, and we buy from most of the recycling centers in Northern California. And over the past few years, we've seen a lot of our customers go out of business, and mainly for the reasons that Jill had presented. And that was a fantastic presentation going over the pilot programs. And my heart goes out to you and the whole group for the frustrations that you've gone through, because Ming's also applied for one of the pilot programs, and we were with the city of Folsom, Sacramento County, and we were awarded one of the pilot spots, but that was in March, and unfortunately in March, COVID hit everybody and things started shutting down. But as things were affected by COVID, the market value for aluminum and PET drastically dropped, and the finances for the program became very bad. So we decided in May to withdraw our application. But during the process, working with staff, and I think the intent of the legislation to get some pilot programs, some innovation was good, but we did run into some bureaucratic difficulties with the process. And I feel bad that they were soliciting an application when they had several others in the pipe. it doesn't seem very good. For us, they started asking for signed leases for all the locations. It became very difficult and challenging. And that also added to one of the reasons that we pulled out of the program. But with the pilot program, the thing that I would mention at this point is it is just temporary, and they are scheduled to end July 2022. So the Culver City program has 18 to 19 months to operate. The other programs that Jill had mentioned, I don't know that they're going to start in the next 6 months. So they might only have 12 months of operation unless legislation next session extends them. With the legislation for pilot programs, it's just temporary. And what the bottle bill needs is long-term comprehensive reform. We don't need temporary fixes. I think through all the stakeholders, whether it's the north part of the state like you're in or the south part of the state, everybody knows the situation and the things that need to be corrected. It's just putting together that comprehensive reform that allows recycling centers in rural areas like yours to exceed a load limit by taking the person's ID, knowing who that person is, where they're coming from, and making sure that it's eligible material. So you don't have to have somebody show up to your facility with 110 pounds of material to tell them that you can't pay them for it because it exceeds that amount. So we do need comprehensive reform. Jill, could you pull up the slides that I had sent you?
Keep talking. I'll have to do a little juggling there because that came in. Yeah.
A little after 5.
No, that I'm working on 2 computers.
All right. And Jill did mention that I am a part of the AB 1583 Recycling Commission, and we are addressing issues related to the recycling markets, mainly the curbside program and the organics. We have 4 subcommittees that are looking at recycling, organics collection, and then a labeling committee and a market development committee. And Assemblymember Eggman authored the bill to provide a commission of 17 people to come up with policy recommendations that would go to the legislature to help cities and counties and the state improve their recycling programs, hopefully to improve the quality of the material, and in some cases reduce what they're putting in their bin. So we're not doing any wish cycling. We're hoping to recycle something because it has a recycling symbol, but in truth, it ends up in some country, someplace, and we don't know what's happening to it. So the commission is working on that. We do have a website that has all the meetings and all the notes and more information to follow. We have a commission meeting next Wednesday, and anybody's welcome to attend via GoToMeetings. And at the end of my presentation, I can get you information on that. Jill, do you have the slides?
No, it's still sending. It's welcome to living up in the rural areas.
Internet speed.
Too many birds on the line.
With the pilot programs, I can speak to a few of them. The one in Culver City, what I do know of it, it does not bring a lot of innovation to the program. I think what they're allowing is a recycler in a truck to operate 3 days a week at different grocery stores. So it's allowing them to operate fewer hours when the requirement is a recycling center has to operate for 30 hours a week. So it appears it was just a small variation that they've authorized. So that program will have 2 locations that will provide service 6 days a week. But the trade-off is all the stores and all the dealers in Culver City are now exempt from the in-store take-back. So the question is the pilot program more convenient than having all the stores take the material back? That's kind of the big question with all the pilot programs. The San Francisco program, if that were to start, I believe right now they're talking about 4 locations that they would service a few times a week. And right now there's over 350 stores in the city of San Francisco that are required to take back material in the store. And if they begin the pilot program, all of those stores would now be exempt. So it's a question of if that program is really from the stores. And then the Irvine program, what I did hear about it is it would be a door-to-door program that is not allowed now, where they would go and set up appointments and pick up material. That would be new, different, but the concern or the question is the cost of such a program. That might work in Southern California with a high density housing. I'm not sure something like that would work statewide when you run into a lot of rural areas, especially in Northern California. And then the 5th one that was awarded, I'm not sure what that one was, but again, only one is operating. The other 3 or 4 will have about 18 months to demonstrate their services, and then they would end unless legislation is signed by the governor by September 2021 to extend them. But I think at this point, as Jill had mentioned, some long-term comprehensive reform needs to take place to fix a lot of issues within the program.
Jeff, it's still sending from me. I don't know if maybe you have the ability to share.
Jill, how are you doing?
I'm sorry. I've got.
He asked how you were doing, so you're saying you.
Yeah, it's still sending. So my suggestion is, Tyler, if can he share his screen? Do you have your presentation on your screen there, Jeff?
Fortunately, I cannot share my screen.
Okay, so in this case, we're just gonna have to wait because it's okay. Like, yeah, unfortunately, if anytime I get something, it takes like 15 minutes. It's just limitations by.
But Jeff, what did the screen say?
Had different slides that I wanted it to go through, but there's areas where the program works and there's areas where the program doesn't work.
You mean the CRV?
What was that?
You mean the CRV program?
Yeah, the CRV program is very complex and it has different formulas on how recycling centers are paid. And they look at the statewide average of costs. So they'll sample the costs up in Humboldt County, and they'll also sample the costs down in the Bay Area or Bakersfield. They'll come up with an average, and that determines what processing payments recycling centers get throughout the state. The problem that you run into is if you're a lower volume, higher cost operation, you don't get paid what you need to stay in business. If you're a lower cost operation or in a market that you have access to the processors, you might do very well. So in Bakersfield, there's about 80 recycling centers for 800,000 people. So one recycling center for every 10,000 people. The formula is really working for those people down there. In the Bay Area, we have 12 recycling centers for about 5 million people. And those recycling centers are all struggling. But the problem with those recycling centers is they have lines from 8 in the morning until 5 at night. And because they're running so many containers through their system, they're showing up as the lowest cost operators in the state. So they're actually pulling down the subsidy that all the other operators get because they're the only operators in the Bay Area. And the problem that creates, especially in the rural areas, is you don't get paid what you need to get your material to market because your volume just doesn't support it. I had a chance to look at the pilot program up there, and the introduction of innovation, RVMs, bag drops, things that they have up in Oregon are very good. They're very convenient, but your program would have to have a recycling center that's operating. And if you implemented the reverse vending machines up there, the reverse vending machines would be competing against your recycling centers. So, and you wouldn't have a way to offset those costs. The solution up in the north area is the recycling centers, they need to be paid more. They need a higher processing payment than what they're getting. And in Jill's presentation, she definitely addressed that. And that's part of what the comprehensive reform needs. One of the slides I was going to show you is how to...
I was looking for the perfect break. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
And I'll get this up for you. Give me half a minute. Share screen. Here. Can you all see this?
Yes.
And Jeff, you just tell me when to advance.
Okay. Broken system, and and we have a growing fund. We'll go to the next slide. And again, this is Kenny and Kevin Luong. Their family immigrated from Vietnam back in the mid 80s. And Kenny has grown the business to be one of the largest processors in the state of California. And the business became so successful that his brother Kevin, who's an orthopedic surgeon, has come back into the business as our chief operating officer. So great family business to work for. Right now, the state has 1,219 recycling centers. And there's areas that are very well served, like LA County, Tulare County, and Kern County. There's a lot of convenience down in Southern California. But if you get into the Bay Area, San Mateo, there's 2 recycling centers, and each one is servicing about 370,000 people. They're overwhelmed with material, and people don't want to stand in line for 2 hours. So they're putting it in their curbside bin. San Francisco, there's only 1 recycling center for just under 900,000 people. So the reason that there's so few is the formula just doesn't pay enough to operate in the Bay Area. And those that are surviving, they have other businesses that are most likely subsidizing their CRV operation right now. So if you go to the next slide. So your neck of the woods, the Northwest coast is barren. That's a long drive for anybody and everybody, which is very unfortunate. That's not the intent of the program. It was to provide convenience. At the other end of the spectrum, down in Bakersfield, there's a lot of recycling centers. If you look at the Burbank, Van Nuys area, it's about 1 recycling center for every 15,000 people. And the difference between Bakersfield and Van Nuys and the North Coast is those recyclers can take their material to market the next day. The people in the North Coast will have to stockpile a full truckload of material before they go to market in Sacramento or San Francisco to reduce their transportation costs. But in the South, they could put it in a pickup truck and drive 3 or 4 or 10 miles to sell their material. So they don't have to have a big float, a high inventory of material. So The people in the North Coast definitely need more support. The people in the South area, they're doing very well the way the formula works right now. And that's where the reform has to take place, is the way the formula is working is it's just a death spiral. The higher cost operators, every week, every month, a few more are falling off because they're deciding to close. So, next slide. Jill.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, I want to talk to you about the Beverage Container Fund. The surplus is growing. CalRecycle started publishing 24 months of data. So they're going back 24 months and they're showing container sales, container returns, and they're breaking it down by recycling centers and curbside programs. So what we're looking at here is a comparison of September 2019 to August 2020, comparing it to September 2018 to August 2019. What's happened in the last 12 months is the recycling rate has dropped below 70%. A big drop in recycling centers, because recycling centers have closed. Back in August of 2019, that's when Replanet closed. And then from March through June, the state was affected by stay-at-home orders, so people weren't going to recycling centers. On the other hand, the curbside programs have seen a significant increase in volume. People wanted to recycle using the convenience of the curbside containers. So the curbside programs have seen an increase. Container sales over the last 12 months are up 6%. Everybody's staying at home and drinking beverages instead of going to restaurants or bars and drinking there. So beverage sales are up, and container returns are also down because there's fewer recycling centers and people have used curbside programs more than recycling centers. At the end of the day, what that means is the fund, with all the money in and all the money out, has grown by over $100 million. So there's an extra $100 million or more in the Beverage Container Fund, and there's a lot of people that know it. And anytime a state fund has extra money, there's going to be people coming out of the woodworks looking to use that money. And one of the issues that hopefully your organization and others will say that money is consumers' money, and it should be used to fund redemption centers in underserved areas or to introduce new redemption opportunities or new technology. The other item, curbside programs, and this isn't an attack on the curbside programs, but in the last 12 months, because more material has moved into the curbside programs, they've seen just under a $12 million increase in payments to the curbside programs. The unfortunate trade-off is consumers have seen about a $53 million decrease in what consumers have received. So the fund has a lot of money. As we head into the legislative session, we have to figure out what kind of reform we need and how the additional money should be used. Because I think that the fund is going to continue to grow over the next few months as COVID remains with us and different counties are rolling back from the orange to the purple. Hopefully we don't go into the red again. So I think the fund, unfortunately, is probably going to be growing in the next few months. So if you could go to the next slide. The stores are required to have a recycling center within a half mile. In rural areas, it's 3 miles. A lot of the major brands are very concerned with this because, as Jill had mentioned, they're getting enforcement orders, and it's through no fault of their own that recycling centers have closed. Less than 3 out of 10 stores are served with a recycling center, but there's a big flaw in the program, in the bottle bill, because it requires the dealers to take containers back and give people their nickels back. But the program does not allow the dealers to get their nickels back because they're uncertified entities. And if the Safeway or the Costco gives out 100 nickels and they take it to the Eel River Recycling Center, the Eel River Recycling Center is not allowed to pay them CRV because they're not allowed to buy material from uncertified entities. So the stores are required to take it back, but they don't get paid. They basically have to eat it. And that's a big flaw in the program. And there's several of the major chains that have gotten very active in the past few months, and they do want to get fixed. They do want to fix the program. If they have to take it back, all they're asking is they want to get paid for providing that service. So if you go to the next slide. A lot of people have seen the Oregon program. They have a wonderful system up there. They have reverse vending machines. They have bag drop programs, very clean and efficient, but they do cost more than what the current system is paying. But talking to some of the grocers, I think they're willing to help out with the cost, provided they get high quality service like this. So if you go to the next slide. Bag drop complements reverse vending machines. Reverse vending machines is a way for immediate payment. You can get your money back, but then there's also a touchless bag drop program, and this is what the San Francisco program is thinking about introducing. But basically, consumers put their material in a bag in their garage. When they have 1 or 2 or 3 bags, they take it to a drop-off location, and then they're electronically paid for their material a few days later. Whether it's reverse vending machines or bag drop, they're great, innovative programs, but they do cost more. But right now, bag drop is not allowed under the current bottle bill. And there's, again, some formula issues with the reverse vending machines that would need to be fixed to make those a better solution for what we're doing. So if you go to the next slide. So the next steps, I mean, we have to get some comprehensive reform. We got to help the recycling centers financially. We got to fix the formulas. And I think there's several people that know the bill well enough that we can do it, but it is a major issue. The grocers, they just want to be paid for their service. It's a fair ask. It's an easy ask, but it's going to be a big ask. And then there's some discussion with the grocers about forming co-ops. So up in your area, the grocers, they could pay $3,000 a month to get out of the program. And if you have 10 grocers up there that don't want to take the material back in the store, and it's completely understandable why they wouldn't, they just have to pay $3,000 a month. So if you have 10 stores in Eureka, they would be sending $30,000 a month to Sacramento, which would do nothing to help open up a redemption center in Eureka. So there's some discussion with grocers being able to band together and say, in Eureka, what do we need? Do we need 10 recycling centers around our stores? Probably not. Do we need 1 or 2 good recycling centers? Yeah. So how do we band together as a group and prop up the recycling center that's in our area? So there's going to be some discussion about that. And then the item that I'm bringing up is making sure that within the legislation that if there's any surplus funds available, that they're designated to be used to establish and support redemption locations. Anytime there's been surplus funds, there's been special projects. They pulled $5 million out in the last budget, and they gave it to low volume recycling centers. And the low volume recycling centers weren't the ones that were hurting the most from the closure of the Replanet sites. It was more of the higher volume ones. So, and then getting Cal Recycle in the game. Right now, Cal Recycle is a referee. They call balls and strikes, but they don't call any plays. Cal Recycle needs to have the authority to make some changes. Right now, they're very constrained by the legislation. And I think they know where the problems are and what some of the solutions are. They just need the ability to call the plays and have some funds where they could prop up redemption centers, especially in the underserved areas. So those are kind of the key items with the long-term reform that we need. So if you go to the next slide. So next session, I mean, it's starting in a few weeks and going into January. We need to see some big reform. There's potential legislation where they might look at a tax on wine and spirits to try and set up their own program. There is a ballot initiative that I think is going November of 2022 that would be a penny tax on single-use plastic. Neither of those address the CRV program in the short term, but they could be detrimental to the program in the long term. Hopefully this session we'll see some long-term reform as Jill had observed areas. So we got a big challenge going into the next session, and with groups like yours helping out, sending letters to your assembly and senators, letting them know that you want your nickels and dimes back and come up with a solution, it's going to help. So I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Jeff.
Very good, Jeff. Thank you so much. That was very informative, if not overwhelming.
Sorry.
Yeah. So are there any questions from board members? Can we use the roll call, please, Tyler? Is Tyler still awake? Tyler, where are
He's
you?
there. He's there.
Bone.
Is Bone still awake? You there, Rex?
He was there.
Maybe he went down. I'm sorry, he's not on the call anymore. That was my bad.
No, he was just there a moment ago.
Yeah, that's okay. He's not now. I will move on while we wait to see if he reconnects. Castellano.
I don't know if I have questions right now. I feel like I kind of just need a moment to absorb all this. I appreciate all of the information. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie.
Hogan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jill and Jeff, for all of that information. At this point, I feel like there are people like yourselves and the people that are in the commissions and the committees that you're working with who know the solution and who, are working with legislative policy analysts to draft legislation and whatnot. And at this point, what I'm kind of wondering is how far are we in this to be able to present something actually to our legislators that they can actually, work with and then bring in to the legislature in this next session. It sounds like there are a lot of great ideas and a lot of people that know what needs to happen. And so, I know there's a lot going on in government always. And so how close are you to kind of having something that's actually in draft form to present? As far as a synopsis of the ideas, that's something that's workable that they can actually present and do something with and maybe make some changes. Can you speak to that as far as where we are in the process?
I'll give you my first blush, and Jeff might have some additional insight in here. But quite frankly, I think that there's a lot of issues. We certainly can provide information around what it would take to help Northern California. But I want to know that's behind the redwood curtain. And I do want to note that we do have representatives of Hambro, also watching our meeting this evening. But we share the same challenges within our communities. So the information that we've presented is, quote, our pilot project. This is what, in part, we need to help make this more viable for us. As Jeff was speaking around the need for processing fees and to have some adjustment, one of the components that I think is going to be really important is having a regional correcting factor so we can address some of the inequities that occur on that front. Now, the bigger issue really comes into at the point that you start introducing legislation, you're going to have all the lobbyists coming in. There are a lot of people who want to have a particular, seat at the table, and some people are going to want more than they're going to, push others off to the side. We really just need to have a concerted effort by our state representatives to make that commitment to fundamentally examine, reform, and rebuild this thing if we are going to have a viable solution. It is completely inappropriate that California consumers, as Jeff just noted, $116 million in excess funding, and we are not being able to avail to get that money back out to the consumers. It's complicated. It's not, obviously, there have actually been several runs in the last few years to fundamentally address some issues around the bottle bill, and they're not really getting anywhere. And part of what they need to hear is from you guys, the locally elected officials from all of your cities. They need to hear that this is an important issue, that you're representing your constituency, and that their job is to figure out what the fix is going to be so that we can implement it and take care of our people. So
yeah, if I could just add, if I could just add, something needs to be introduced in January or February to work its way through the process. The major stakeholders in the bottle bill are the beverage manufacturers, the grocers, the haulers, the distributors. They all have very good, strong lobbyists. The people that have, I'll say, the weakest voice are the recycling centers and the consumers. So when it gets down to the local level with groups like yours talking to your elected officials, you're speaking for your local consumers. So it definitely helps with that communication. Going into this session, I think there's going to be something that happens because there's so much frustration with the bottle bill. I think there's a lot of interest into what they're doing with the stewardship organization up in Oregon. It seems to be working very well. The convenience is there. The consumer satisfaction is there. And it appears that the beverage manufacturers and the grocers, they're all getting along. The biggest difference between the Oregon program and the California program is in California, our waste haulers get paid CRV for the material that they collect. And it is a very large amount. And it affects everybody's monthly trash bill by about $2 to $3 a month. And in Oregon, they don't pay the haulers for that. So that's a big difference. So in California, if they were to try and switch to a program similar to Oregon, and the haulers did not maintain what they're getting now, it could be a big rate increase for all the programs because the haulers are using the CRV money that they're collecting to help offset the cost of providing curbside service. So it's a really big number, and that would affect everybody in the state. So something needs to happen. Hopefully the big stakeholders can all come up with these solutions. And I think with what Jill's addressed and what I brought up, it's kind of along the lines with what people are thinking.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Other questions from the board?
Wilson.
Wilson. Who's up to speak?
I
Am I up to speak?
You're
Yeah.
up.
Next, I'll come back in a second.
Okay, well, my question is, I could start with Jeff and go to wherever it goes. My understanding was that from what we've had in previous meetings, unless I misunderstood it, the recyclers, all the recyclers get is what they sell they pay the CRV money to the customer when they came in. So they pay their nickel for the bottle. And then all they get out of that is that they get to sell the bottle. But from what Jeff is explaining, there's money coming from the state back to the recyclers for that CRV.
Yeah, the processing fee.
Yeah.
So Frank, you'll recall that we talked about HWMA receives a portion of the processing fee in addition to the scrap value of the material that we sell. And the processing fee is insufficient, and the scrap value of the material has been depressed for some time.
Where did I miss this in the conversation that we're getting the processing fee? I mean, it's what I understood was that the recycler paid $1.65 a pound for aluminum for the cans,
Right.
and they were able to sell those for $40 or for 40 cents a pound.
That was the scrap value, but we also receive a small processing fee. And I don't have those figures, but that helps for us to get reimbursed for the CRV. The scrap value is not covering our cost of labor, overhead, equipment, or the freight to market.
Well, I understand that completely.
Yeah.
So what does that processing fee amount to?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Tyler?
Let me jump in. Let me jump in real quick. So the processing fee was to offset the cost of operation. So let's talk aluminum cans do not have a processing fee because the recyclers are living off of the scrap value. So they're returning a nickel for every container, and then they're able to sell the aluminum as scrap. You can sell it in California, you can sell it in Nevada, you can sell it in Alabama and get that scrap value.
All you get is scrap value.
You get scrap value, and that's enough to cover your cost. And I'll say for aluminum cans in today's market, somebody might be getting $800 a ton for that material, and it costs them $500 a ton to process it. So they're making $300 a ton. So they're doing okay on aluminum. The problem that you run into is with plastic. And if plastic has a processing cost of $500, but in today's market, the recyclers are only getting $200 a ton, they're losing money. So that's when the state comes in with a $300 a ton processing payment to offset the difference between your processing costs and the scrap value. But they look at it on a statewide average. So if you have higher than $500 a ton operating cost because you're a rural or a lower volume site, you start losing money pretty quick.
I think the question was, I appreciate, I think we all, I understand
I'm not
that.
getting an answer to my question. Is what
I think the question is, how much processing are we getting? I mean, that if you can tell us that, that's great, Jeff. I know how it's made. I just want to know how much we're getting after it's made.
So so obviously we don't receive any processing fees for aluminum.
Heard that.
Okay, and I'll have to figure out where I put this Excel sheet. I've got lots of things around here. Hold on. But it was pretty nominal. I want to say it was, oh no, that's the wrong number in my head.
And I'll say, and not to be cavalier, but you're getting the same processing payments as the people in Bakersfield.
Right.
And it's not working because your transportation costs from your area to the Bay Area are $1,200 a load. And in Bakersfield, they're paying $5 to get it to market. There's a big difference in costs. And because you're getting the same processing payments based on a statewide average, it's not covering the cost of operations in the higher cost areas.
Understood.
So what Cal
Rex,
Recycle does is they issue these on the basis of cost per pound. So the glass is just shy of 7 cents for a pound of glass, and the peat is $1.50 for a pound. Not a unit, but a pound.
$1.50?
Yeah.
$1.50 for a pound.
And Jill had mentioned it, but I'll just reemphasize. 15 or 20 years ago, a recycling center was seeing about 50% of their volume was aluminum cans and 30% was plastic. So they had a higher percentage of higher value material, but now they're getting more plastic at a lower value than aluminum. It's switched. The ratios of aluminum to plastic have switched. So the recycling centers are handling more lightweight, lower value material in plastic. And the way the processing payments are calculated is it takes about 2 years to catch up. So the processing payments that'll go into effect January 1st, 2021 are based on 2019 operating costs. So any health insurance, any wages, any increases that they've incurred in the last 2 years, they have to eat. So it's a very slow formula to catch up. And that's one of the recommendations will be to change the timing of the cost studies and how quick they adjust the processing payments. Hopefully that helps.
Well,
Yeah.
I hear parts of this, but I guess this part with the processing fee, we're getting 7 cents a pound for glass on top of whatever you get for whatever you sell your glass for.
Well, I'm just going to point out that glass is oftentimes a marginal or negative valued commodity right now, and it has been for quite some time.
And I understand that, but we are receiving processing fees for glass and plastic, $0.01 and 7 cents a pound, or
$1.50. So if you, I don't have the thing in front of me.
30 bucks a ton?
So if you look at what our net and loss by material per ton is, we are negative $85 a ton, and we are for glass, and we are negative $553 a ton for the peat plastic, and that is with the processing fee that is provided by Cal Recycle, and that is with the scrap value that we are selling this material on market. And it is the underlying reason that recycling centers, especially located up here in Northern California's other areas, were operating in a deficit. And so that's the undercurrent of what's happened. Now, aluminum, we're not receiving processing fees, but at the point that we are covering all of our costs, we're making $4.28 a ton. We still make some money on cardboard. We still make some money on our other white goods, which help to subsidize our overall operations.
So we do make money on aluminum?
$4.28 a ton.
How much do we lose on plastic?
553.
And glass is 85.
Yes.
And we make plus $4 on aluminum.
Correct.
How do we make $4 on aluminum if we pay $1.65 a pound for the recycle at CRV, and then we sell it for roughly $40 a pound?
That's where it comes into basically an economy of scale. You've got to have sufficient volume coming in, and there's a point where you finally break in terms of being, it's not a direct linear relationship there, but you get a sufficient volume of material in, and at some point you've covered all of your costs, and then you begin to make money, if you will, on it.
We'll have to talk later. It's
That
beyond me how you can pay $1.65 a pound and sell it for 40 cents and how you can ever come out. I mean, you're
Yeah.
4 to 1.
I'm
Jeff
more
might be able
trucks.
to
You
explain
collect
it.
a billion tons and you'd be
So-
4 to 1.
Frank and Rex, just so we're clear, the 165 that we pay out, we get that back reimbursed from the processor,
Understood.
less a percentage. So when we pay 165 a ton, when we provide that material to the processor reimburses us that outlay.
That nickel.
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
No,
that's the
no.
part that I've never heard before.
Well, I mean, and I'm just gonna say, I can't support another letter to Woods and McGuire. I mean, these guys, Ray Charles can see there's a problem here, and they know very well there's a problem. I just got off the phone with them today. I was there last week at Cal Recycle. I'm here, we hear about this pilot program. They won't accept this, they won't accept that. The pilot program was just what it was supposed to be. We were supposed to be innovative and say, this is the way we want to do it. We want to do A through L on Mondays and Wednesdays, and this is what we want to do, because it is a pilot program. And pilot programs aren't just going to shut off in 2022. If there's one successful, they're going to finance it. That's the whole idea. Private business and public has pilot programs to see what works. But this is our third meeting in a row on this, and I'm pretty much come to the resilient. And I told somebody that we would probably never do recycling again here. So I think I'm right, because we don't want to do it. We can't do it. We're too small. We can't go anywhere else to do it. We can't do that. We can't do this. I've heard all the can'ts, so we just can't. But I think we need to be honest with the consumer, much like our CPI index and our and everything else. Rural gets screwed. We follow a San Francisco CPI, but we sometimes have a little bit difference up here, sometimes depending where we're at. So what I'm saying is, we need to be honest with the consumer, because we're talking about the same thing we talked about in the September meeting. I'm looking at them, and the October meeting, and we're not any closer, except we've spent a lot of hours putting a pilot program together that now that they were holding for a rural, and it's been out there for 16 months, and we just finally got on it 3 months ago. So what I'm saying is, we really have to be, in the long run, somewhere we have to say, instead of working on it, just tell people we're not going to do it. We can recycle it if you put it on the curb, we'll recycle it somehow and get it out. So it's not, but I don't know if anybody else has noticed, our streets are covered with crap. And the whole idea in 1986, because I remember it real well, was to get everything off the streets. And now we're not doing it. And I know we subsidize our waste disposal to the tune of $900 some odd thousand a year. So not mattresses, but we can do goods and offset some of our other expenses. I think we need to be honest with the consumer, because we're not getting any closer. We're finding out more stuff tonight. We got a better breakdown of tonight what's going on. But I mean, in all honesty, we've got to be honest, because that's the phone calls I still get the most of. When are we doing CRB? When are we doing CRB? I got 4 today. I told them we will not do CRB in the foreseeable future.
So Rex, when you spoke with Cal Recycle last week, did they indicate that they were on the verge of awarding another applicant?
No,
Okay.
I didn't think
And you know what?
Yeah.
That's exactly it. I've been in regular communication with them. They've been nothing but encouraging. Please go do this. And so we've been working on this really hard. We've got Linda and Tasha back to the table and willing to develop a proposal. We have, manufacturer's person here. So we actually have something that we feel, could have been viable. But I also want to note that Hambro was on the line. Hambro was on the line, and they put in their application earlier this year, and they were denied also. They are more rural than we are, and they were denied.
Humboldt, I mean, if you guys look around, Humboldt, God bless Arcata, has a history in the state of being a more recyclable county than any other county. We have we got all this crap because of Wesley in the first place. Where did he come from? Bingo. So there is a certain element that we could have taken care of a long time ago. But if we wait just long enough, somebody else will either take it or it'll run out. And that's what happened. And that's fine. I'm fine with that. And I'm fine with, not overburdening staff, because we don't have room, we don't have people, we don't have time. But I think we need to just actually say, this is what's going to happen. But I think if we send another letter to McGuire and Woods, they're not going to be happy because they know what's going on. They're fighting for us. But I believe they're fighting. I've talked to them both. They're both doing this. But if we want to send them another letter and just, oh, by the way, we want you to fix our recycling, they're both going to look at it and go, oh, no, you guys want your recycling fixed? We didn't know that. I just think the idea of writing a letter just to write a letter is ridiculous. And I think it will play against our hand rather than for our hand. They won't be excited to see it. I'm betting dollars to donuts. Maybe I'm wrong.
So I want to note that when the application was announced, the pilot program last year, I know that Linda took a look at it. I took a look at it. What they were looking at was for proposals that would be addressing essentially this big loss of recycling centers created by Replanet. My apologies if I'm glitching out. And it wasn't designed to meet the conditions that we have today. So when we all looked at it, it was like, these are great. We're not, looking at dropping in reverse vending machines. We're not looking at running routes. HWMA does not run routes. That would be a great thing if one of the franchise haulers was interested in that, but we don't run routes. So, based on what the state was proposing for the 5 projects, it was really clear that it was more towards these more urban areas. So when we learned about it, we certainly have been working really hard on this.
Can I say something up here in Crescent City?
Certainly, go ahead.
We are successfully recycling. One of the great benefits is you're not. We had a lady come up this afternoon from Leggett Valley. We've had people come from Laytonville. Jill had mentioned before that we did look at Humboldt County and could we operate successfully down there? Marginally. One of the biggest concerns we have is that the recycling system as it is today won't exist a year or 2 from now because of what a mess it is in. What we would do, as for what Jeff has mentioned, if we could get some money for the processing fee to include aluminum, because 2 years ago when we started, we were getting 75 cents a pound. Now we're getting 33 cents a pound. So we could use those processing fees that are currently going to Cal Recycle and not coming to anyone. We can do it. We work hard. We have a crew. We don't have, obviously not a union crew. Randy and I have both worked the last couple Saturdays because we've got so many clients coming up from Eureka. It's there. It's possible. One of the things we need to find down there is a location. The benefit we have here, we own the mill site and we're utilizing the mill site. I'll bet there's some empty mill sites in Humboldt County, having grown up there when there were a lot of mills operating and they're not operating now. I think the market can solve it. We need help from McGuire. We need help from the governor. We need some processing fees that needs to be predicated not on what was happening 2 years ago, but what's happening 6 months ago and what's going to be happening in the future. We'd be happy to go back, reduce the processing fees if we can get our 75 cents or 85 cents for aluminum. So I think you're wrong, Mr. Bone, to say, let's give up on it. The market can solve it, but we have to have some help from the government who's taking the money out of the market and not returning it to the consumer. And to quote Forrest Gump, and that's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, good points. Thank you for your input. So other board members or
if that's okay. I agree with this, all that's being said by Rex and Jill about this pilot program is, I'm 100% on board with that. What I want to wrap my question up at, when I respond to my constituents in the council, that the one gentleman said for each the things that we take back to the processor that we're reimbursed for that nickel we give the customer, we're reimbursed by the processor in all of the CRV prices.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes.
okay, Frank. Thanks, Frank. Next person. Tyler.
So,
Chair, Director Castellano has a question or a comment.
Sophia. This will be quick. I'm just wondering if either now or prior to other members' questions, I could see Director Duffy's suggested action again, because if I'm recalling it correctly, it does seem like there was a proposal that you included an option, or there was the potential for us having some recycling available locally while also, making requests of our legislators.
Yeah, see here. Let me try to get this up correct. It'll take me a minute. Share screen.
And if I could just add a couple comments with board member Bond, sending letters just saying fix it. I agree with you. I don't think they typically work, and they just fall on deaf ears. But I think with what the people from Hambro are talking about, and Ms. Duffy, a list of solutions. These are the things that you need to fix, and this is how it'll help. I think providing the specifics is going to help this time around. And I think there's quite a few people within the industry that are going to come up with a specific list of ways to change the bottle bill that will help communities like yours and organizations like Hambro. So I think providing the specific list, and I can share that with Chair Duffy, what we're working on down here. And I'd be happy to get with the Hambro people as well.
Well, through the chair, I agree 100%. But what I'm saying is, the Beverage Association spends about probably $3 to $4 million a year or more in lobbying. I know the Spirits Association is in the top 5, and I'm pretty sure Humboldt and Del Norte County are somewhere out by the popcorn stand, giving free bags of popcorn. We don't have a very big lobbying group. So whatever we're going to put forward is going to be very minimal compared to what they're coming forward. So what I'm trying to say here, we can send our local guys and say, hey, you're not doing enough. You need to do this for us, and piss them off. Or we can talk to these other guys, or have them talk to them and says what works for us on a statewide basis. Now, Hambro says they need some processing money for aluminum, I think is what I heard. I mean, I have no idea what that represents. I have no idea what that represents, or how much. And I don't know if they'd want to put it out there. So what I'm saying is, for some reason we can't do it. They can't do it because they have a mill site. I can't believe that they can save that much money on mill site because there's properties available. But with that being said, all I'm saying, and it's rather stark, but I think we need to tell people we have nothing in the plans or the works for the next. We said 6 months at the last meeting, and I'm going to say another 9 months right now, because even if you wanted to buy vending machines, our stores have already got the letters, and they're getting a series of 3 of them. They get 1 letter, and then they get 3 letters, and then I think they get 60 days after the 3rd letter. Is that right?
Something like that.
And I'm reading one right here just as I talk, but I'm just saying, and you're right, they're going to pay the $3,000. They're not going to want to get into a can co-op. They're not going to want to, and I think you have to have a certain amount of volume stores. We don't have a lot of big stores. We have a few. So with that being said, I'm just trying to figure out where we go. I'm just saying the effort of all our councils and everybody else to put a letter together, they feel really good, and we can all vote 100% on them. The letters won't do us any good. We should be dealing on a different level with somewhere, because we have not got any closer in the last 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months. I feel we took cans for 3 days, but we got overwhelmed. So that's just,
Well, actually, I'm going to disagree with you. I did not say send the letter to McGuire and Woods. What I said was we need to send these letters to legislative relief, because
You said
there
our state representatives.
Our state representatives, and we have a number of state representatives throughout California who have taken up the mantle of recycling, and there are a number of them in Southern California as well as the Bay Area, and we need to find those people with whom this message is going to resonate. The reality is that we have worked really hard in terms of trying to develop some form of proposal that will work for our community. And I really want to thank Homestead as well as Recology for their willingness to even consider coming back into the fold. They don't have to do this. And the reality is that a singular location here in Humboldt County operated by one person is going to have the same problem that we had when we tried reopening. If we could have a coordinated and concerted approach and the ability to simply manage inbound customers, we can find a way to make this work. We ultimately still need to figure out how to address the underlying market conditions, which is part of what Jeff is bringing up here in terms of the disparities that exist within the processing fees and some of the other potential incentives for getting here. And I guarantee you that we all have a much better understanding of what's happening with the CRV program than anybody did a year ago, and certainly even more than 6 months ago. So, this has allowed all of us to get our heads wrapped around it. It's not going to have a fix within 6 months, maybe even a year, but we absolutely have to have a seat at the table in order to make sure that we're, adequately advocating for what's going to be in the best interest of rural California.
Okay, good discussion. Who's left? Sophia, do you have any comments?
Sophia may have left. Maybe she came back. She said she had to leave and she apologized. I didn't know if it was just a temporary thing.
We have hit everybody except Director Bone. I am sorry I did skip you in the roll call list because you were offline at the time.
Yeah, I shut down for some reason. Anyway, what do we? I didn't even know what we were voting on.
We were on
a letter
about Jeff's presentation. This is still just public comment on item 5.
Oh, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so what is the board's preference here? Sounds like there's
I have another question.
Okay, go ahead, Leslie.
I actually have 2 questions. In terms of Director Duffy, your legislative relief request, do you have a sense of how long that might take?
No.
I don't know. Yeah.
Nope. I mean, it'll have to be introduced. There would have to be some form of legislation that would be introduced, and then, of course, it would, still be subject to, either approval or veto by the governor.
Sure.
But absent, the pilot project, I mean, that's what we were seeing as being a potential, Band-Aid or a bridge, and absent that, we don't really have a lot of options, because the issue is, if we could just have this appointments. I mean, this whole thing has been driven by we needed to be able to manage the incoming number of people, and Cal Recycle telling us, no, you can't do that. And then everything else, we're trying to figure out how to make it economically viable as well. But yeah, I mean.
And then thank you. And then my second question is, and I don't know if this is the appropriate context for this, but I noticed the folks at Hambro mentioned that it's possible up there because they have a free site. And I'm just curious if they had access to a site for free down here, if that would make it possible for them to create an operation in this area for now. I don't know.
That would be a consideration for Hambro. We looked at it. A great model to look at, I think, because I'm a market guy, is to look at what's happening in Redding. Bigfoot Recycling pretty much handles all of the North Valley. They have one spot where they're doing their baling and handling the product. They have trucks running in and out of that. That was my model that I imagined for Humboldt County that would work. I'd like Mr. Bowen to come up and take a look at our facility. I think he might be able to add something to ours as well as what I think could work down in Humboldt County.
You could do that in your free time, Rex.
Oh, I'm familiar. I'm not familiar with their recycling. I'm familiar with the operation where it's at and stuff. But yeah, and that's fine. I think there's a way around it. But all I'm saying is before we write, and I know that a recycling advocate assemblyman in LA would love a letter from us, and I'm sure that would probably get him up, push him over the edge, because he's only got 25 million people in his county, and I know the 162 between Del Norte and us will push him over the edge. I'm just saying, and then you can find out which ones they are. I'm just saying our state officials that we have now are Woods and McGuire. I mean, you've had Woods at the facility. McGuire has initiated 2 different meetings, and Chris Nielsen a couple more with Cal Recycle. So they are humping it. They're doing their job. I mean, I've been talking to them on a weekly basis, probably for 2.5 months. They're as frustrated as everybody that we've got to this point. They really thought we had a shot at the pilot program. And with that, we didn't, I guess. So I'm just saying, yeah, I'll come take a look at the site. I'm telling you, if we get something, we can do a pop-up down here for you, and you guys come down here 3 days a week. I'll find you a site, and you come down 1 day a week. Will be A through L. So it's not appointments. They can just get in the line. Appointments be a pain in the ass. Are you 1010 or you 1015? And then do it alphabetical if you guys want to, and I'll find you a location if we have to. We'll have to figure out covering and everything else, but there are some locations. Most of our mills are turning into cannabis operations. So they're recycling green plants. So, but there are locations. So
it's worth
Yeah, well, it seems like, well, let's see, Leslie has a comment.
And Chair, not to interrupt, there is some public comment from Linda as well still.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go to Leslie, and then we'll go to Linda.
I was actually just going to ask if we had public comment. That's all.
Yeah, okay.
I have comments, but that can wait.
Yeah, okay. So Linda.
Yeah, I was going to, hi, how's it going? I was going to echo something that Jeff was talking about with, curbside collection and the and CRV increasing in curbside collection. I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that right now with I think when he wrote his presentation, he wasn't familiar with the contract that we have with the HWMA when we're setting the rate that we pass on to curbside recycling customers. And that's for all recycled materials. We include whatever we get from the state that might be a CRV benefit that comes through from the Samoa facility. So it's not completely lost in the case of Humboldt County. Our contract is different and was the first one of its kind in the state to adjust its fees. It's kind of reminiscent, when we went into the recycling processing agreement, is reminiscent to the kind of conversations we were having when we were going through that proposal, and people understanding that. And one of the things that happens is then if, you set up, the buyback centers, and we don't want to take anything that might be benefiting people from the curbside, so if it does end up going into a curbside program, then we are benefiting people that are not only in Humboldt County at using curbside programs, but we're also benefiting those in Crescent City as well who want to participate, because they do send their recycling processing down here as well. So I just wanted to point that out. And also it saves on greenhouse gases with not having as many people going into recycling centers, which is a different topic.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Linda. So where are we here? I guess I'm seeing in a nutshell 2 problems or issues. The short term is we've got people that have been collecting this stuff for 10 months. And as we discovered when we opened up our CRV B, we couldn't handle the volume. So, if we open up tomorrow or 2 months from now, we're going to have that, initial kind of flash flood that we're going to have to figure out some way to deal with. And certainly the appointment seemed to be our best shot at doing that. And then at a certain point, that flash flood will subside and we'll be back to normal, which would be a different ball game. So I'm not sure. I mean, logistically, you could get really big to deal with the flood, and then once it's over, you're back to, downsizing to just operate on a normal basis. And I hear, what Rex says, legislative reform is, a couple of years away.
Mm-hmm.
And if we wait 2 more years, that demand, that flash flood is just going to inundate certainly our facility, if not others as well. So I don't have any immediate solutions to this short-term high demand kind of situation. I mean, we've talked a lot about it. We've had some ideas. We tried reopening and just that just didn't work. So as others have said, I'm disappointed about the pilot project because that was an attempt in many ways to deal with that as well. So I guess I would be putting it back to the board and what they would prefer to do. Jill kind of presented this letter for legislative relief. Rex has spoken to that. Do other board members have anything to say about whether it's worth putting the effort into another letter to not just McGuire and Wood, but it sounds like, other legislators that, have taken this on themselves and are part of a coalition for reform, and just make sure that, they hear our voice along with the beverage manufacturers and the haulers and the big boys with the big bucks. Leslie, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't think this is necessarily, an either or situation. I think it makes plenty of sense to continue to have ongoing relationships with our local legislators, as well as foster relationships with other people, who are more active in this field. But and I imagine that we have, we all have different relationships with them. But to me, of course, I think it makes a lot of sense to go forward with continuing to work for legislative change, including like appreciation for, Representative Wood and Senator McGuire, and, I'm sure they would be curious to hear an update, of where things are at, and why we're continuing to move forward with this request. I don't think that, I think that makes a lot of sense personally. People contact me about things multiple times all the time, and that's just my job. I don't get real upset about it. And then in terms of, simultaneously, I think that we can, I don't know. I would definitely be curious to have a conversation with the folks at Hambro to see if we can make something work out. I think we should also continue to look and see what other options might arise during this time. This is just a random question. I don't think it's possible, but we can't add an extra tax on the plastic water bottles, can we? Probably not. The laughter is all the response.
Well, honestly, Leslie, that's kind of what, not the tax itself, but there was legislation that was, they lost by 4 votes, and part of it was getting at this whole issue of being able to address and reform, plastics, and that was in September, and that was defeated. So you're not far beyond that. And I think that speaks to, the need for extended producer responsibilities, as well as a whole host of things. Personally, I think that if they're selling beverages, they shouldn't be in plastic containers anymore because we can't reuse them, but that gets into a whole other thing. But
I mean, I would love to just keep them out of our county personally, but I don't know if we're quite there yet, but that's a direction I'd be interested in going towards. So, and I don't know, I think I kind of shared all my thoughts. I feel like does staff have enough in terms of that for me? I mean, I know other members have things to say too.
I do. I put forward the legislative relief because underneath CalRecycle's existing regulatory structure, our hands are tied. And just simply because any one of us trying to reopen is going to be confronted with just a lot of people coming in. The regulatory structure is that you cannot tell people, no, you can't come. You cannot tell people your license plate is ending on an odd or even number. You cannot come in. It says that it's available and open for anybody who wants to come in. And I've had conversations with Bear River now. I've had discussions with representatives from Hoopa Valley Tribe and a number of other folks. And they're all like, well, maybe we can just do our people only. And it's like, that's not the way the state CRV program is set up. It's everybody. So, again, the reason I wanted to illustrate the facilities at Redway and Humboldt Sanitation is that they are caught actually even more so than we are. We have a little bit more room in which we have a queue lane, but they don't have that either. And so, trying to figure out what that sweet spot is. So the pilot project proposal, as we were developing it, we felt like we could get there. The real sticking point for us was if there's a pilot project being limited to 25 pounds, people will freak, especially with, the backlog of volume, which is why I really wanted to make sure, did I read that correct? And they said, you did. And yes, you'll have to abide by that. So clearly, even if we had a slot and we could have been awarded, we still would have this issue around a lot of material and people having to make appointments for a long period of time before they could get rid of that backlog. Okay. So finding something that maybe has temporary legislative relief to enable us to open and manage. The only way that's going to happen, according to CalRecycle, is if there is legislative action that is taken. That is the only way in which they will amend any of their rules. So I don't know another path, forward. And I will tell you that I've spent, months to the tune of there are a number of other, projects that are currently being neglected because we just simply don't have the time. So if you guys have ideas, we certainly, we'll continue looking for things, but it really is a legislative relief that we need.
Yeah, well, it seems like classic tail wagging the dog. Like we've spoken before, I mean, this is really CalRecycle's problem. And we get stuck trying to make it
No, it's our problem.
work.
They have the fix.
Yeah.
It's not their problem. They're not getting phone calls from people every day. Well, they are, but not from our people.
Oh, they're getting them. They tell me that we have really mean people up here.
Well, that's true.
Well, anyway, I mean, if you guys want to write a letter, go ahead. I don't support it. So if you're going to do it,
So
go ahead, write it.
Rex, if we don't write a letter, are you saying we just put out a public service announcement saying we in Humboldt County are not going to provide any CRV redemption services, and that's the reality, and sorry about that, but that's the way it is in the foreseeable future?
Tell there's a legislative fix
Yeah.
And I mean, we could write letters to our legislators or the recycling friendly legislators and say, hey, we need this, but that's not going to drive the bus, Michael. I mean, we're pissing in the wind. That's not going to, that's not going to change their outlook at all. We need a legislative fix. We need to explain it to people. And that's all it takes. We can go back to our boards and ask them to write letters, and our staff can write letters, because God knows they don't write enough letters and don't have enough shit to do. But I'm just saying, our electeds are already getting enough letters, and unless they're completely out of touch. I mean, I talked to Rebecca from McGuire's office. I talked to Chris, talked to Paul from Woods' office, and talked to Woods and talked to McGuire. If they don't know we've got an issue up here, because I guarantee you, in the last 3.5 months, I have not talked to them about one other issue up here but CRV. Because I'm trying to put that in the forefront. So if they don't think it's an issue, and maybe they just don't like my ass and they're not doing it because they don't like me, maybe everybody else should call them. Maybe we should write a letter. But what I'm saying is they're fully aware there's an issue up here. And until they get their counterparts who control the House and the Assembly and get some of that $1.7 billion out of Cal Recycle and get it doing what it's supposed to do, and taking, I guarantee you that silly law about appointments, they would not close us down if we broke it. But I'm just, we can hang our hat on it and everything else. That's why pilot programs are made, is to change those silly little things, because that does not have to change, but you can change the parameters. You can't change the spirit of the law. So what I'm saying is, I think everybody personally should get on the horn and start calling them if you want. They're fully aware. If you guys all want to write letters, that's great. Letters not going to do any good. I made 2 texts to guys asking if I can have 5 acres of their land 3 days a week for a few months for Hambro, or however long they want, because there are a couple pieces of industrial property around that aren't being used till somebody starts doing cannabis on them. So.
Okay, so you're actually going to pursue that?
Michael, give me another option that we've heard about tonight that will actually get us to the promised land, other than writing another letter.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you. That's why I'm asking you. Are you, as a supervisor, going to pursue that, or do you think we, as the Waste Management Authority, should be?
Got 73 acres in your backyard that aren't being used right now because of COVID. I mean, I'm just telling you, we got 73 acres at the Humboldt County Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
35,000 of it under roof.
Yeah.
32,000 of it under, that can actually be driven through and be covered. So, I mean, that's just one option that came to me. I'm not saying it's going there, please, but I'm just saying, without a traffic impact actually too, except for on Van Ness there. So, I mean, there is, if we want to do this, but I mean, we're not going to get a pilot program, so we're going to have to help somebody do this. I mean, Frank can go down there and talk to the guys until they get it brought out. Maybe we can use part of the old Eel River sawmill. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we can go 1 week there, 1 week other. I don't know. We'll have to talk to Hambro. I don't know what they can do and how mobile they can be. But we're going to have to do something and be honest to the people that we're not going to do it. We're going to try to find them an option. And I think people are going, if we're going to put the whole basis on this with the governor signing something, we're not going to get a whole bunch of warm and fuzzies from our people.
Yeah. Well, not to mention that it's going to take forever.
There's Jeff, 1.6, $1.7 billion sitting out there, and we're looking at a $42 billion deficit. He's not going to be spending money on cans. He's going to be spending money on other things, services.
So, Jill, what is your take, having listened to this discussion? Do you think it would be worth? I know you have talked to Hambro, and it was my understanding that they did pencil out the finances, and it didn't really pencil out too well.
Right. We actually had some discussions earlier this summer around that. So they did come down, take a look at a couple of sites that we had talked about, including the Redwood Acres general area. You know, basically, given the investment that would be required in order to set up, a location that was
They're still on here.
not going to quite pencil out at that time. And I'm not going to speak, for them, but, we did, reach out and have that conversation around the possibility. That was part of our conversation that Linda, myself, and Tasha had with McGuire's staff back in early June, as well as with Cal Recycle staff around, can we open up a pop-up under our existing certification? And the answer was, each site has to be certified. So we would be looking at, a multi-month process in order to get, a pop-up site just so we could handle the mobile collection component. So that's why, ultimately we were being encouraged. I've had ongoing conversations with Cal Recycle. It sounds like Rex has had ongoing conversations with Cal Recycle. And we found out on Tuesday morning that the presentation that I had for you, as well as the staff report of something that we feel, the three of us representing these recycling entities, we felt like this could work. That the rug has been pulled out, from underneath our feet. So the only thing that I can offer back is, we're not able to open underneath the existing rules and regulations. So what we need is some form of legislative relief so that we can. If we're not eligible for a pilot project, can some legislation be introduced on behalf of the rural communities that would allow us some of the flexibility that we need to provide the service to the community? Mm-hmm. Whether that comes from individual phone calls or emails from folks, that's fine. But having a letter go out underneath the umbrella of HWMA, as well as being echoed by the cities, I think it does help. I think it does.
Well, I know that other letter we sent did go to like the Rural Counties Association.
RCRC, and we're on top of it also. We got 37 counties going through the same thing.
Yeah. So, is that group a lobbying organization, or have a lobbying capacity in terms of pushing for
we have somebody that does just waste management. We have somebody that does lumber, timber. Yeah, we are. It is.
Are they advocating these points, Rex?
Yes.
The ones that we brought forward? I'm sorry?
They are talking to people in the assembly. Well, the problem is with COVID, you can't walk over to the house as much as, the doors are locked.
Right.
Yeah, they are. There is constant conference because we got 37 counties going through the same thing. The other thing is, I do not think we're going to be able to do this on a rural basis. I think if we try to do it on a rural basis, I guarantee you the suburban and urban communities are going to want to jump in on this. If the rurals are going to get a little bit, they're going to say, hey, we're subsidizing, which they will be. So 37 rural counties in RCRC account for 54% of the land mass, 9% of the population.
So if we were to initiate an appointment system in the short term to deal with the backlog, Rex, you said earlier, it might piss off Cal Recycle, but you didn't think they would fine us or shut us down.
We're not even, you gotta remember, you guys voted to decertify.
Right.
And now we're gonna have to retrain. And how much retraining can there be if we were certified yesterday? Like being a doctor in California and being a doctor in Nevada, you have to take a test.
Sure. So there would be that step, but it seems like what Jill keeps saying is the regulations have tied our hands to get out from under this. So I'm thinking, well, if we just go ahead and do it, even though it may not comply with regulations, what are they going to do? Are they going to fine us?
They're not going to pay us the nickel.
So your general counsel does not advise that this agency willfully violate regulations.
Okay.
I truly don't think you should even entertain that at the board level. Sorry, I see board member Castellano appreciating the irony of this. But,
that wasn't my idea.
Yes, it was.
No. All right.
from my perspective, it took us 2 months to get certified here in Crescent City. Why wouldn't you apply for certification for 2 or 3 locations in Humboldt County, Fortuna, Eureka, Arcata, or McKinleyville, and then have, again, back to the Reading model where they do all their baling they're at the Bigfoot Recycling Center. So I could foresee either Hambro or someone down there that wanted to get into an enterprise, filing to open these 3 convenience zone or whatever it's termed. Go ahead and get applications for those sites within a 3 or 4 month period. Have that application. You'd need to make arrangements with, I don't know how many balers are in Humboldt County. I know, I'm quite confident there's one at the Eureka plant. Is there one at Samoa? I don't know if McKinleyville has one or Fortuna, but any one of those facilities, it could be rented by the recycler to go in and process that. So I don't see it as an overwhelming obstacle if you want to do it. If somebody has to take some risk, or there might have to be some financial assistance for someone like us to entice us to come down and get involved in this endeavor. But it's not out of the question. I think to give up, that's the only way to find peace, is to surrender.
Okay. Well, we don't seem to be getting, in using Jill's term, we're not finding the sweet spot here.
Let's write some letters. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know last month or the month before, we talked about, putting an effort into looking at longer term options, and I'm assuming staff will continue to do that. It's just that those options might have been reduced or the path become more narrow because of the regulatory structure of Cal Recycle, as Jill put it, really makes it difficult, if not impossible, for us to function. So I don't have a problem with being honest with Humboldt County citizens and telling them, sorry, take your CRVs to Del Norte or Crescent City or Ukiah or any place that Reading that has figured this out or has enough volume that it works for them. But in the short term, we're just not able to do it. And yeah, that's the truth. Those are the facts. And I don't have any problem being honest with people in that regard. Any other comments from the board? Yes, Leslie.
Maybe I'll just reiterate what I said earlier in terms of, I feel like it does make sense to continue to, present what we think will work in the long term to legislators and, including relief. But also I do think it's worth having this conversation with Hambro or, looking at some other alternative. I don't know, maybe I'm curious, Rex, if this is something you want to do at the county level, or should we converse? I don't know. I guess I'm wondering if it makes sense to do it within the HWMA board level, or if it makes sense for, how would we best go forward with that?
You mean a letter?
No, I think she's talking about, working at something out with Hambro or a similar organization. Is that what you mean, Leslie? Yeah.
Yeah, I can deal with our public works and stuff like that, and then they can talk with your people. I've got the JPA. So basically, the JPA of HWMA was not, when it was set up, I talked to the guy that wrote it, and it was not set up for recycling. We revamped a lot of stuff and added a lot of stuff. So it's not under our preview to do recycling. We do a lot of stuff that wasn't in it originally, and now that the going's got tough, we got to find somebody else to do it because there's no money in it. So, bottom line is the money used to be good and it's not good. So nobody wants to do it, but we're still out there we're still taking the money. I.e. Hambro says that it's successful for them. I guess, I mean, I think there's other ways we can look at it. I think we could probably put it out there. I'm going to make some phone calls to some other people in the morning. And I'm see if we can get some emergency CRV funds. I mean, we've got to do something to get this thing going. We are uncertified now. And since it's, which I, again, so we'll take 2 months, like you said, Mike, do we recertify now and take 2 months to recertify a couple locations in case we hit a sweet spot? I don't know. This is so screwed up. I can't tell. I don't know why we decertified in the first place. But with that being said, we're in this position. So
Rex, I want to remind you, Rex, that our certification expired in May. And we have been working with CalRecycle trying to have them do remote trainings. And so they finally have that, and they're going to be putting that in place in December. Okay, great. So we'll recertify then. So how many places got decertified? We're the only one out of all the, anyway, that's fine. But I'm just saying, so do we certify other locations? I'm not sure, Michael. I mean, I keep hearing nothing's going to work. So unless they give us a bunch of money. We're not asking for a bunch of money. We're asking for appointments. We're asking if we could increase the allowable daily limits so that way we can get rid of the backlog and then we can reduce the overall demand. We are asking that we get handling fees, which by rights we should have been receiving, but because of some old archaic approaches, we should have been getting those handling fees. Recology and HWMA didn't receive it. I know that HomeSand was able to receive it for a short period of time. We're not asking for a lot. In the course of trying to develop an innovative proposal like the grant criteria asked for, we look to have the recycling centers being able to handle the larger volume material and then have those reverse vending machines to accept the smaller volumes, let's say less than 50 containers. So when you go to the grocery store, you can redeem it. And that, we had talked about conceptually how those units would be serviced, because we're going to have somebody come in there at least 3-4 times a day in which to empty out the containers and get those. So it's no different than setting up a pilot, or not a pilot project, but an offsite collection. It's still going to require people. It's going to still require equipment, and you're still going to have to get the material back to a point where you can bale it so that you can get it into market. So, I mean, all these things can be done. It's all going to cost money to some degree. And so we were trying to figure out how we do that utilizing the existing infrastructure. Our ask was not big. CalRecycle told us no. Okay.
Yeah, maybe the letter should just go to CalRecycle and say, call us up when you gotten your legislative framework amended.
My message will stay the same. Be mean, call CalRecycle. We're not going to take it in the foreseeable future. We're going into the holidays. I mean, we better tell people. People are still hanging on to this stuff, thinking they're going to get their $80 or $60 or $40. They can go to Crescent City. Thank God Hambro likes to work late. They're going to put a night shift on. It looks like there's 3 guys there waiting to recycle right now.
Well, crazy enough, I think that there was a little silver lining for Hambro in particular. With their not being approved for the pilot project, they are going to be able to accept the up to 100 pounds. If they had been approved as a pilot project, that whole area, you'd only be able to bring 25 pounds max per material maximum. So that would have rendered it just not feasible at all for even Humboldt residents to go up there.
I do want to just say quickly, I mean, I feel like maybe we're approaching the point of moving on from this topic, but I do really appreciate Director Duffy, like all of the work you've put into this, and it's been really great having Jeff here and Hambro here and the other guests we've had. I've definitely learned a lot more about the context, both in breadth and depth. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so do we need, like, Jill, are you looking for like an action item with a vote that gives you specific direction, or?
Oh, it was simply a letter to have the board authorize you, the chair, prepare and send out a letter. And of course, I'll help you write that letter.
Yeah, okay. So maybe we should vote on that then?
You're the chair. You can just send a letter. It doesn't have to be voted on. I mean, Linda.
Okay.
I mean, I mean.
Well, I respectfully disagree. If he was sending a letter as an individual, he could totally do that. But if he's sending a letter as the chair of the board, then he needs to be blessed by the board to send off a letter speaking on your behalf.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's see. Is there a motion to send a letter to selected legislators?
I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, a lot of what Rex says resonates with me for sure, as far as like sending a letter and what good is that going to do. However, I do understand that what we're searching for is more long-term legislative relief. And so my request would be that any letters that are sent have concrete actions, so that we're actually providing solutions and we're not just complaining about the same problem, which, as everyone knows, and our legislative representatives included, like, they know the problem. So I would just request that we're being very specific in any letter that we compose as far as what we think the solutions are. How do these formulas need to be changed? How could the pilot project be changed in terms of maybe more than 5 projects, or actually allowing bag drop, or changing the formulas so that the reverse vending machines are viable? Some concrete ideas would need to be included in a letter for me to support it. And then, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think we need to stop complaining and start telling them what we need to solve this problem. So is there a motion to move forward on a letter from, I guess, myself with Jill's help, and we would be sending this not just to McGuire and Woods, but to other select legislators who are working on this issue? Is there a motion from anybody?
I'll make that motion, Michael.
Okay, we've got a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it. Is this the only action that we're going to take on this item? We're sending a letter. Is that the only thing, or are we?
I think in the short term, for this evening's purpose, yes, that's the letter in general requesting legislative relief. But I hear what you were saying in terms of being solution oriented, problem solving oriented, not just complaining.
Okay, and what about Hambro's suggestion about, simultaneously trying to recertify sites? I understand they're not economically viable until some of these changes happen at a larger level. Is there any direction we can take to pursue any further options, any just guidance that would help through HWMA and the board to do something like at the same time that we're trying to go for larger scale change? Or what are the thoughts on that?
It will be the responsibility of the recycler to get the certification. So if Hambro is wanting to do this, it'll be their responsibility to secure the certification.
Okay, so you provided a second, Elaine? Is that correct?
Sure, I'll second writing letters all day long.
So we have a motion and a second. Tyler, are you still with us? Go down the roll call, please.
Bone.
No.
Sorry, let me get my list back. Castellano.
Aye.
Hogan.
Aye.
Pereira is absent. Wilson.
No.
Sweeney.
Aye. So that was 3-2.
3-2 with 1 absent.
Yeah, okay, so the motion carries. This has certainly been a good discussion, overwhelming as it may be, complex as it may be, but appreciate all your time, and especially our guests and their input on this discussion. Let's move on to the next item for this evening's agenda, which is board member reports. Can we go down the roll call list again, Tyler, please?
Boom.
Yeah, I've been getting lots of phone calls about, oh, we already talked about that. I'm done. Go ahead.
Castellano.
I'm good for tonight.
Hogan. Wilson.
Nothing to report.
Sweeney.
No, I have nothing to report either. So next item on our agenda is the executive director's report. So we're back to Jill.
So if you all thought that CRV was fun, wait till you hear the next item. Treated wood waste. Earlier this week, HWMA received notice that starting January 1st, treated wood waste must be handled as hazardous waste. And this is a result of a bill that was vetoed by Governor Newsom in September. However, following the veto, there were continued efforts to enable the extension of this legislation, and those discussions in the legislation to allow that material to be disposed of as incidental waste has now failed. So transfer stations effective January 1st are no longer going to be allowed to accept treated wood waste. So the hour is late, and I do want to note that treated wood waste includes anything like pressure treated wood, creosote wood, as well as copper sulfide containing materials. We will go ahead and get some of this information out to you all, but this is going to be a pretty big deal in terms of how this affects people, as well as the cost that will be driven up to dispose of this material. We're taking a look at what some sorts of options may be, but again, I think one of the things that just I can't begin to underscore in light of some of the big challenges that we've had this year, several of which that y'all have not been aware of, just because we've been literally trying to manage things the best that we can, is that our materials management system is really vulnerable, and it doesn't take much to upset things. And so we'll be getting this information, out to you, and it's not going to affect just HWMA, but it's also going to be affecting Humboldt Sanitation, as well as Recology, and all of our transfer stations, and will be, statewide. So there's our contractors and our local businesses. There's going to be some real challenges coming to all of us effective January 1st. So with that, I will conclude. Other than we've just put in a lot of time and energy trying to keep a lot of these efforts going forward.
So it's always been my understanding in terms of green waste that painted wood or pressure treated wood does not belong in a green waste bin. So is this like more of a solid waste issue rather than a green waste compost issue, that you should not be putting pressure treated wood in your garbage can, or construction debris shows up and half of it's sheetrock and half of it's pressure treated 2x4s, and we used to be able to just put that on the tipping floor and haul it off, and now we can't do that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's correct.
Mm-hmm. So does that mean we just reject it?
Well, that's part of what we're going to have to be looking at. Yeah. I mean, we've got a lot, but I also recognize, the hour's late, but I need this on your radar because we're not meeting again until January, and there's going to be some things that are going to be going into effect then. And it's too bad that the legislation was vetoed. And I think everybody's going to be scrambling now, trying to figure out how this affects them. Because it's not just Humboldt County again. This is going to be something which is statewide. And we don't have sufficient disposal locations for this type of material, and certainly the collection and the transportation of this material is going to have to be handled as hazardous waste.
Yeah.
That's far
So
more.
is a lot of the fire debris, when homes are burnt and that debris is collected and hauled off? I remember, I think it was Dry Creek was talking about that a couple of months ago. I mean, is that considered toxic or hazardous?
They have to go through, and DTSC and CalRecycle has developed screening mechanisms to determine whether or not material will be allowable for certain types of landfills, and then the landfills themselves, depending whether they're in California or Oregon, they may also have criterion which they have to meet for the disposal of that material. So it's getting more and more attention, obviously, as we are having these larger and larger fire events that are, essentially wiping out communities. So yeah, it's this is specific to treated wood waste, not necessarily.
Yes, I hear you.
Waste, but yeah.
I hear you. Yeah, got it. Okay. It looks like we have another closed session scheduled. Is that correct? Item 8.
We do.
So I guess that means everybody except the board and legal counsel needs to leave, or do you just put them in the waiting room, Tyler?
I would ask anybody that is not a board member, legal counsel, or the executive director to leave. I am going to be making Jill the host and locking the meeting. Jill, you'll be able to unlock the meeting if anybody leaves and needs to rejoin. But you'll just have to use under the security preferences, you'll have to unlock it and then lock it again. People will still go into the waiting room, so you have some freedom there, but that is it for me, friends. I am no longer in charge. Have a great evening.
Yeah. Thank you, Tyler.
Could I possibly have like a 1 minute break or 2 minute break?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
For long meetings, if you wear a pair of Depends, you won't have that problem. I'm just telling you, it works for me.
Now don't give away all your secrets, Rex.
I'm old.
I'll be right back.
So we need to make sure that Access Humboldt is offline also, because they are still in here.
Do you know how to communicate with them, Jill?
I don't.
Who's the host?
And hear us talking. I am the host, but I'm
they just left.
If you're the host, you can lock them out.
They're gone.
No, they're still
Not
here.
on my screen.
I don't see that little red thing that says we're being recorded still.
Yeah, I don't see anything that says that we're being recorded. My record button is off.
Yeah, mine too. Okay, Nancy, do you want to kick this off?
Not till Leslie gets back, and also